Good afternoon, Sir Benya and classmates. I'm Queen Esther B. Punzalan, and our topic is about Chapter 10, Utilization of Assessment Data. So in this chapter, we can say that test results can aid in making informed decisions to improve curriculum and instructions. So sa chapter na ito, malalaman natin or matututunan natin na ang test result ay makakatulong upang ma-improve ang curriculum and instruction ng mga teacher. So, kapag ang isang bata ay nag-take ng exam or ng test, ang unang papasok sa isip niya is, what is the score of my test? Ano kaya yung score ko? Ano kaya? Ilan kaya? Ganyan. Pero sa chapter na ito, mas palalalimin pa natin yung tanong natin. Ano kaya yung ibig sabihin ng score ko? What does my score means? So, yan. Matututunan natin kung ano nga ba ibig sabihin ng mga scores na nakukuha ng bata sa mga test na kinukuha nila. In this chapter, we shall look into the types of test scores. So, malalaman natin kung ano-ano ang mga types ng score. This chapter shall likewise present test score interpretations using norm criterion-referenced interpretation. So, kapag nalaman natin yung score ng bata, may interpret natin siya kung ano siya using norm criterion-referenced interpretation. So, now, the intended learning outcome at the end of chapter 10, students are expected to provide meaning to the test result using norm reference and criterion reference interpretation. So, yan. Ang students ay kaya na nilang interpret yung test result using this norm reference and criterion reference. So, now, we will proceed to the types of scores. So, according to Harris 2003, results of tests are in the form of scores, and this may be the raw scores, percentile, rank, as Z-scores, T-scores, Stannines, or level, category, or proficiency scores. So, we will first discuss what is raw and percentage scores. So, raw scores are obtained by simply counting the number of correct responses in a test following scoring direction. So, paano nga ba natin makukuha yung raw scores? By simply counting the number of the correct responses. For example, si student A, nakakuha siya ng 30/50 sa math test. So, since yung score niya is 30, ay yun yung mga score, or yun yung mga tinama niya, siya yung magiging raw score natin. So, kung ano yung tinama niya, kung ano yung tamang sagot niya, or score niya, ay yun yung raw score. So, paano naman natin makukuha yung percentage score? So, since ang score ni student A ay 30/50, so, ang gagawin natin para makuha natin yung percentage is 30 divided by 50 times 100 is equals to 60%. So, basically, the student was able to answer 60% of the item. So, since yung nakuha nating sagot ay 60%, ang ibig sabihin lang nito ay si student A ay nasagutan niya yung 60% of the items ng test na nakinuha niya, which is math test. So, second type of score is percentile rank. So, a percentile rank gives the percent of scores that are at or below a raw or standard score. It is used to rank students in reference sample. So, si percentile rank, siya yung, ito yung malalaman natin kung ano yung rank ng student based sa score niya. I-compare natin yung rank niya sa mga iba pang nag-take ng exam. So, dito sa percentile rank, hindi natin pwedeng gamitin yung kaninang ginawa natin na percentage score kasi hindi siya validated dito. Halimbawa, paano natin malalaman? Si student A nakakuha siya, si student B naman. Si student B, nakakuha siya ng 35 score. So, equivalent ng 35 score is 84th percentile. So, paano natin malalaman yung comparison niya sa ibang mga students na nag-take? So, sabihin na lang natin, or example talaga natin, na kasama niya mag-take is 200. Lahat sila nag-take ay 200. So, paano natin makukuha? So, 84 divide 100. So, ang sagot ay 0.4 times 200 kasi 200 silang lahat nag-take. And ang sagot dyan is 168. So, ang interpretation natin dyan, if there were 200 students who took the test, a percentile rank of 84 indicates that the student is higher than 168 students. So, sinasabi dyan na yung score niya or yung rank ng 35 na score, which is 84th percentile, ibig sabihin lang nun ay mas mataas yung rank niya kaysa sa 168 na students na kasunod niya. So, next type of score is standard scores. It is difficult to use raw scores when making comparison between groups on different tests, considering that the tests have different levels of difficulties. So, mahirap daw na ang dalawang raw score ay i-compare mo kasi magkaiba sila ng level of difficulty. Halimbawa, sa Filipinos, ang isang bata ay nakakuha ng 40/50. Tapos, nag-take din siya ng exam pero nakuha niya sa math naman is 25/50. So, hindi mo sila pwedeng ipag-compare na dahil magkaiba sila. Ito, sa Pilipino, maaaring ang bata ay magaling sa Pilipinos, pero sa math, mahina siya. Meron naman ng students na mas magaling sa math, pero hindi naman ganong kagaling sa ibang subject. So, paano kaya natin gagawin yan? So, since ang standard score ay hindi tayo pwede compare ng iba't ibang score dahil sa level of difficulty nila, gagamitin natin is yung derived scores. So, what is derived scores? Are a family of scores that allow us to make comparison between test scores. So, ito yung gagamitin natin sa pag-compare ng scores. So, meron tayong dalawang types ng derived scores. The first is the first scores of relative standing. Ito yung percentile, standard score, and Stannines. So, and the second type is developmental scores. Ito naman yung scores that have been transformed from raw scores and reflect the average performance at age and grade levels. So, basically, yung standard scores, ito yung meron silang same mean and the same standard deviation, kaya mas madali silang i-compute at mas madali silang i-compare sa ibang mga score. So, the different types of standard score are Z-scores, T-scores, and Stannines. So, yun yung some of the different types of standard scores. So, malalaman natin yan kung ano-ano yung mga pagkakaiba nila. Yung Z-scores, T-scores, and Stannines. So, i-discuss yan first ni Tamondong, the next reporter of our group.
Okay, good day. So after Queen Esther discussed the raw score, percentile score, percentage score, and of course the standard score. So once again, in the standard score, we have the three types of standard scores. So first is Z-score, T-score, and Stannine. So before I proceed on our next slide, so I show you a normal distribution about standard deviation. So we can see right now a normal curve about standard deviation. So here, so this is a 0, so this is the mean of standard deviation, and of course we can see the negative value and the positive value of standard deviation. So if a negative 10 or positive 10. So and of course we can see the cumulative percentages, rounded percentile, and of course the z-score, t-score, Stannine, and the person in Stannine. So here I have a question, and we have a scenario about the 10 learners who were attempting to take the test. Okay, so in the 10 I so in the so in a 50 items in math test, 10 learners who were attempted to test, and one of them, namely Jocelyn, who got or who obtained the score of 35 out of 50. So the question here, in the 10 learners, did Jocelyn perform well? Okay, so we can say it might be yes, because the half of 50 is 25. So pasado pa rin si Jocelyn. So this means Jocelyn was able to answer correctly 60% in the 50 items in math test. So most of the time, some of teachers, they convert the score of learner to percentage score. So for example, okay, so balikan natin. So for example, a 35 score or the raw score of Jocelyn, they will convert into percentage score. So for example, 35 divided by 50 equals to 0.7 and multiplied by 100. So the answer is 70. So Jocelyn performed 70% in math test. However, percentage score is useful in describing a student's performance, but the problem, raw score or task score and percentage score, is that they do not provide adequate information about Jocelyn's performance. That's why hindi siya malinaw o hindi siya nabigyan ng konkretong solusyon o konkretong information about her performance, no? So if we can get the performance of Jocelyn by using adequate information, concrete information, and of course a concrete data. So we use the type of test also known as z-score. Okay, z-score. Okay, so z-score, it gives the number of standard deviations of a test score above or below the mean. So the solution here is z equals x. So this is the x of raw score or the task score, and of course minus to mean and divided by standard deviation. Okay, and of course z-score, a negative z-score, it means below the mean. So kapag ang isang value ng isang negative z-score is mapupunta siya sa below the average. Okay, so while a positive value or positive z-score, it means the above average. Okay, so for example, so this is the mean, so the mean is 0. Okay, so if a negative z-score is below the mean, so it is a negative. Okay, so while a positive z-score, it is the above average, so this is the positive. Okay, so and of course to compute the value of Jocelyn's performance, we use the algorithm steps for z-score. So step 1 that we are doing or that we are get, and of course to our instruction, first is subtract the raw score or task score to the mean, and of course the step 2, divide the total score to standard deviation. Okay, so once again, so this is the formula that we use in z-score. So z equals to x, so this is the raw score, minus or subtract into mean, and of course divided by standard deviation. Okay, so let us go back in the scenario. So the given here is the mean. So the raw score is 35. So Jocelyn obtained a score of 35. So ayun po yung nakuha niya. So and of course, the given here is the mean is 25, and of course the standard deviation is 10. So and of course we use the algorithm steps na nabanggit ko kanina to get the total score or the Jocelyn's performance. Okay, so in the math test. So here, so the solution, so z equals to 35, so this is the raw score or test score na nakuha ni Jocelyn, and subtract into 25. So 35 minus 25, so equals to 10. And of course we copy the standard deviation of 10. So 10 10 divided by 10, of course, is equals to 1. So the answer is, so the z-score of Jocelyn's performance is 1. So the performance of Jocelyn is the above average. Okay? Okay. Okay, so ito po yung line or guide for we know the performance of a learner. Kung napunta po siya sa positive, so he or she above the average. Okay, while if a z-score na lumabas is negative, he or she below the average. Okay? Okay, now, so in computation, the z-score of Jocelyn's performance is 1. So this is the positive 1. So it means Jocelyn's score performed 84% in the math test. Okay, so it is obvious that the score of Jocelyn belongs to the upper 50% of the norm group. So to be more specific, we can determine the percentile rank equivalent to a z-score of 1. Okay? Okay, so to be more specific, we can determine the percentile rank to the z-score of 1. So we can check using a normal distribution at the normal curve. So the normal curve is on the above. Okay, so a z-score of 1, it translates to a percentile rank of 84%, which means that the score of Jocelyn is above 84% of the z-score. Okay, but some of the teachers are not comfortable with using z-score because a negative score or a negative number in the normal distribution and scale, hindi nila makuha-kuha. And for example here, a score of 12 in a 20 items science test with an arithmetic average of 15 and a standard deviation of 2. Okay, so if we can compute by using z-score, so this is the given, so 12, so the given is raw score 12, mean is 15, and standard deviation is 2. So if we can compute by using z-score formula, so 12 minus 15 equals negative 3. Okay, and of course copy the standard deviation of 2. So now dito tayo magkakatalo-talo because the answer is negative 3. Okay, so the value is negative 3. So now negative 3 divided by 2, so the answer is negative 1.5. So the question, bakit naging negative 1.5? So it means negative 1.5 is below the average, right? And of course, students or parents of a learner asking, why is it having a negative score? So parents or learners may not understand, and of course, they confuse why it is negative. So we fix this, we can translate negative 1.5 and convert the z-score. That does not include a negative value like at his score. So we use the formula of this score. Okay, so in the t-score, instead of the mean is 0, so magagawin po natin siyang 50. Okay, so 50, so the mean of t-score is 50 instead of 0. Okay, and the standard deviation is 2. Okay, alright, so here are the picture of t-score. So the mean is 50 and the positive value is 60 and 70 and 80, while in the left side, the below average is 40, 30, 20 until to 10. Okay, so now, so the formula of t-score So here are the formula of t-score. So t equals 10. So this 10 is the standard deviation. Okay? And the z-score, and of course, we multiply the z-score. Okay? So 10 multiply the z-score. And of course, we add the 50, which is the mean. Okay? So now, so the formula is t equals to 10 multiplied by z plus 50. So negative 1.5 we convert into t-score. So let us solve this. So t equals 10, and the standard and the z-score of 12 is negative 1.5. So now 10 multiplied by negative 1.5 is the answer is negative 15, and of course we copy the mean, which is 50. So now we can add the negative 15 and 50. So the answer is 35. Okay, so 35, it pertaining the raw score of our scenario kanina, na yung 12 is convert into t-score, which is the 35. So a negative value, or a negative z-score value of negative 1.5, we convert to a t-score of 35 para mas madaling maintindihan ng learners or a parents, and of course some of the teachers and all of the teachers. Okay, so a t-score of 35 indicates the raw score of 12 na negative 1.5. So we convert in t-score, so which is 35. Okay. So now let us proceed on the last type of standard score, which is Stannine. So when I say Stannine, standard's 9-point scale, which is also known as Stannine. So the original word is sta, so the prefix is so we get the word standard, and they get the prefix of sta, and of course they add the suffix of 9, so which is called a Stannine. And Stannine is a 9-point grading scale from 1 to 9, so 1 to 9. Okay, so the mean of the Stannine have a 5, and the standard deviation is 2. Compared in a z-score, the mean is 0 and the standard deviation is 1, and while in the t-score, the mean is 50 instead of 0, and the standard deviation is 10. And this Stannine, so the mean of the Stannine is 5 and the standard deviation is 2. Okay, so this the Stannine pertaining on the 1, 2, 3, it means the below average. Okay, so kapag tumapat yung score ng isang learner into 1 to 3, so it pertaining on below average. Okay, so while in the Stannine 4, 5, and 6, this is the average, or sakto lamang, or siya yung nando sa mean ng normal curve. Okay, while in the Stannine of 7, 8, and 9, which is called a above average. Okay, so this Stannine, the formula Stannine is as equals the standard deviation, and of course multiplied by z-score and add 50. Okay, and add 50. Okay, so the problem here in the Stannine, so the problem here in the Stannine, the value of 2 shows the students' performance level is below average, no? And if we can multiply 2 multiplied into z-score, so the score or the performance of learner is below average. So makita po natin in percent in Stannine, so the 2 is 7% of percent in Stannine, so it means it is a below average. So the percent of Stannine, nakatapat lang po siya sa 7%. So it means na the performance or the the performance of a learner ay below the average. Okay? But in the Stannine, they tell Stannines is that they are not entirely precise. Ibig sabihin, hindi siya masyadong malinaw for using giving performance for learners. So, and according to the writer of the book, sinabi nga po na the problem in the Stannine is that they are not entirely precise o hindi siya masyadong detailed, hindi siya masyadong malinaw, and hindi siya masyadong konkreto for a raw score of the students. Okay? Okay, so the next reporter is Jenny Espejo.
Curve equivalence. So what is normal curve equivalent? Normal curve equivalent, or NCE, is a normalized standard score within the range 1 to 99. Normal curve equivalent is also a way of measuring where students fall along to the normal curve. It says that normal curve equivalent is also similar to percentile ranks, which indicates an individual student's ranks, or how many students out of 100 had a lower score. And it also says that NCE can relate to other scores such as Stannine. So NCE can be thought of roughly equivalent to Stannine to 1 decimal place. For example, the NCE is 48, then turns to Stannine, it will become a 4.8. So I have a chart here. In the upper part is a standard deviation. In the middle, the red one is a normal curve equivalent. And at the bottom is percentile equivalent. As you can see, there is a similarities a normal curve to a percentile equivalent. They are both ranged into 1 to 99, but also there is a differences because here in the normal curve they're equally divided, or their spaces in between is equal, while in the percentile it's not. So developmental scores. What is developmental scores? Developmental scores is a type of scores that used to show an individual position along to developmental continuum. So grade equivalent is one of the example of, or let's say type of developmental scores. So what is grade equivalent? Grade equivalent, or GE, is describes as a learner's developmental growth. It gives a picture as to where he or she is on an achievement continuum. It also says that grade equivalent is a number that describes a student's location of an achievement continuum. And I have a chart here. As you can see, there's a score and grade equivalent. So, for example, there's a 4th grade student. He or she got GE of 6.2 of reading test. So, obviously demonstrate that the 4th grade students is high. There's a high developmental level than to his or her 4th grade peers. So next, there's a type. Next is types of test score interpretations. What is types of test score interpretation? There are 4 frames of references for interpreting test scores, which is an ability, growth, norm, and criterion-referenced interpretation. So, what is ability? It is the students perform what they are capable of doing. Growth is a student change or improve relative to what they're doing earlier. And norm is students doing with respect to what typical or reasonable. And criterion is the students what can or cannot do. The next reporter will be Mr. Villano.
Norm reference interpretation. Norm reference. The term norms originated from the Latin word norma, which means precept or rule. By definition, it pertains to the average score in a test. Norm reference interpretations are explanations of a learner performance in comparison with other learners of the same age or grade. So, yung norm reference daw ay yung magkakaiba ng isang learners sa kapwa niya kahit pare sila ng grade or edad. The use of standard scores and percentile ranks are common in norm reference interpretation. So, ano nga ba yung percentile rank? Percentile rank is the score in its frequency distribution that are equal to or lower than it. So, dito nila nalalaman kung above average ba siya o average. Mamaya explain natin yan. Ito mga example ng norms reference. The child places 8 in a reading class is a norm reference descriptions. A child score in a reading assessment at the 85 is another example. So ito yung mga example ng mga norm references dahil meron silang rank. So sabi ni Campbell, when using percentile ranks, caution tells interpreters that percentile units are not necessarily equal in size, and it's critically important that the norms can be developed using a comparable cohort of students. Norm reference evaluations determines the learner place or rank. So, yung norm reference evaluation naman, dito nila tinutukoy kung ano yung rank ng isang bata o kung saan siya nababagay. Assessment instruments that lends itself to this kind of interpretation include standardized aptitude and achievement tests, teacher-made survey tests, interest, inventories and adjustment inventory. So, yung standardized aptitude, ito yung ginagamit ng mga teacher na may isang sagot o isang format na ginagamit nila sa mga tests, kagaya na lang ng mga achievement test o mga bar exam. According to Kuvinshin and Borish, a norm reference assessment tends to be general as it covers only one or two items are sampled for each learning objective. So, sabi daw dito nila, refer to assessments that rank students on a bell curve to determine the highest and lowest performance of students. So, naniniwala si Kuvishin and Borish na pag pinagsama nila yung lahat ng mga natutunan ng mga bata, doon nila malalaman kung sino yung mga nasa above normal o average. This implies that scores are dispersed and score outstanding become more telling. Besides, the purpose of norm reference measure is to discriminate between high and low achievers. So, yun na nga, base dun kila Boris and Cobain, yung norm reference, ito yung parang pang-discriminate sa mga bata kasi dun lumalabas yung mga kung sino yung mga mahihina matuto at yung sino yung mga matatalino. So, the norm process sorts and ranks students on the bell curve. So, ito yung example ng bell curve. So, dito sa kaliwa is below average and then sa gitna naman is average. Tapos yung mga matatalino na dito sila sa above average. So, ganito sinusukat yung sa norm references interpretation. Ganyan sila mag-rank. Tests that result to norm reference interpretation often use the selected response format based on national National Education Standards. So, ito yung pagsusulit na gumagamit ng format base sa napili niya pero dapat ay nakabase pa rin sila sa National Education Standards. Dapat sinusundan pa rin nila yon. So, they are commonly used for purposes like school admission, program, placement, and program eligibility. So, yun na nga. Dito nila madalas ginagamit yan sa mga like school admission, program placement, and program eligibility. So, the 5 guidelines when interpreting norm reference test scores, detect any unexpected pattern of scores. So, be on the lookout for unusual, especially extreme scores. Next is determine the reason for score patterns, because sometimes there is a reason underperforming is one or more subject. Do not expect surprises of every student. The teacher must know how each student is performing in his/her class. Small differences in subject scores should be viewed as chance fluctuations. Differences in test scores may or may not be satisfying significant to call for instructional intervention. So last one is use information from various assessments and observation to explain performance on the other assessments. It would not be shocking to learn that a student with poor writing skills in English and Filipino will obtain a low score in the essay end of the test. So, yun lang po sa norm reference. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Sir Villano. So, I am Jocelyn S and I am the last reporter for this group. Ang nasa na topic sa akin is about Criterion-referenced interpretations. So, sabi dito, the word criterion came from the Greek word criterion, which means standard. So, bago natin alamin yung meaning ng criterion-referenced interpretations, alamin muna natin yung differences between criteria and criterion. Okay? Kapag sinabing criteria, ito ay plural noun. Kapag sinabing plural noun, ito ay more than one. So, dito nire-referred yung isang standards ng decisions na nagagawin mo ng isang students. While the criterion, ito naman ay isang singular. Kapag singular, ito ay only one. So, dito, naipapakita yung isang evidence dun sa criteria na sinundan ng isang bata or sinundan mo. Okay? So, ang example dito is kapag tayo ay nag-take ng NCAI, I think ito ay tinitake third year high school. So, kapag tayo nag-take ng NCAI, dito, kailangan may imita yung standards para malaman natin yung kukuhain o tutahakin nating course pagdating natin ng senior high school. Meron din example dito is yung entrance exam. Kapag tayo nag-take ng entrance exam, kailangan natin na i-meet yung standards or yung criteria dun sa exam para tayo ay makapasa at makapasok dun sa school na gusto nating pasukan. Okay, sabi dito, the criterion-referenced interpretations provide meaning to the test scores by describing what the learners can and cannot do in light of standard. Okay? Kapag ang criterion-referenced interpretation naman daw, it is provide meaning. Siya yung nagpo-provide ng meaning sa isang test scores by describing kung ano yung kaya at hindi kaya ng isang students. Like for example, kapag tayo ay pinagawa ng teacher natin ng artwork or ng essay or sa artwork, meron doon laging naka-indicate na criteria. So, doon tayo magbe-base kung paano natin susundan o paano natin magagawa yung isang output or yung isang essay. Okay? So, kailangan na may imit natin yung standards na ilagay doon sa criteria. But, kapag napasa na natin ito sa teacher natin, yung teacher na natin yung mag-e-interpret. Okay? Yung teacher na natin yung mag-e-interpret doon sa ginawa nating output. Okay, like essay. So, doon makikita ng teacher kung magaling ba o nasunod ba ng bata yung criteria na nilagay ng isang teacher. Okay, kung na-meet ba ng isang bata yung standards doon sa criteria. Okay, doon malalaman ng teacher kung magaling ba mag-compose yung isang students ng essay or maganda ba yung pagkakasulat ng students ng essay, ng isang essay. Okay? So, sabi dito, the mastery test generate criterion-referenced interpretation. So, though the teacher made test scales, test competency test, performance assessments, and licensure examination. So, yung mastery test, ito ay nag-generate sa Criterion-referenced interpretations. Like for example here, katulad ko, kapag ako ay naging fourth year college, ako ay magkakaroon ng final demo o ako ay magiging student teacher. Okay? So, doon, kailangan kong i-meet or may mga kailangang i-meet na standards. Titingnan doon kung ako ba ay mastered na sa pagiging isang guro. Kung na-meet ko ba yung standards sa pagiging isang guro. Okay? Isa pa sa example dito ay ang pag tayo nag-take ng LET passer, ng LET exam, okay? So, may mga standards tayo na kailangang i-meet para masabi or para malaman natin kung tayo ba ay magiging licensed professional teacher. Okay? So, sabi dito, the multiple choice questions, alternate response items, short response, and essay enable criterion reference since these test formats can be used to measure specific body knowledge skill set that students have acquired. Okay? Yung multiple choice questions, alternate response items, ito yung mga true or false. Short response, ito yung mga direct questions katulad ng what, where, sumasagot sa tanong na what, where, when, how, and yung essay. So, ito yung mga test na ginagamit para ma-measure yung specific body knowledge ng isang students. Kung natuto ba siya sa tinuro ng kanyang teacher, okay? Kung natuto ba siya dun sa, kung may mga learnings na ba siya natuto or na-acquired dun sa tinuro ng kanyang teacher. Okay? So, sabi dito, the Criterion-referenced scores include percentage, correct speed of performance, quality ratings, and precision of performance. Okay? Kung ang Criterion-referenced interpretation ay nagpo-provide ng meaning sa isang test score, again, kung ang Criterion-referenced interpretation ay nagpo-provide ng meaning sa isang test scores, ang Criterion-referenced scores naman, ito ay nag-include ng percentage, correct speed of performance, and quality ratings. Kumbaga, ito na yung criteria. Okay? Andito na nakalagay yung scores, kung ano yung ginawang performance ng isang bata. Okay? So, sabi, when interpreting standardized test scores, there is assumption of normality in the distribution of test scores. This is not necessary in a criterion-referenced framework. Okay? So, there's assumption of normality in the distribution of test scores. Katulad na lamang nito. Like for example here, sabi dito, this code to the left, meaning the thin end tail of the curve goes to the left part of the distribution. Okay? Kapag ang thin end tail daw ng curve ay napunta sa left part, ito ay negatively skewed. Okay? Negatively skewed. Okay? So, most of the scores here are high. Kapag negatively skewed, most of the scores are high and most students got scores above the mean value. So, ang mean value dito is less than the median and mode value. Okay? So, like for example, yung mean dito is 43, yung median dito is 47, yung mode dito is 50. So, sabi, ang mean value daw is less than, mas mababa sa median and mode. So, yung mean dito is 43, yung median dito is 47, and yung mode dito is 50. Okay? Next, ito yung mga cause kung bakit nakakuha ng mataas na score yung students. Sabi dito, the outstanding performance of the students could be attributed to the following. Sabi, the group of students is intelligent. So, marahil ang students na yon ay galing sa star sections, higher sections, section 1, kaya sila ay nakakuha ng mataas na score. Next is there is enough time to finish the examination. Mahaba yung allotted time na binigay sa kanila ng kanilang teacher, kaya nasagutan nilang na maayos yung exam. Okay? Sabi dito, very easy test items. Easy, madali lang siguro yung items na yon, or siguro ito ay about knowledge test lang. Okay? So, effective instructions. Maganda at maayos yung pagkakaturo sa kanila ng kanilang teacher. Maayos yung pagkakadeliver and effective yung pagkakaturo sa kanila ng teacher. Kaya kaya nila naintindihan agad yung lesson. Next, students prepare themselves for examination. So, naghanda talaga yung isang students sa examination, or I think natuto talaga siya or mabilis niyang na-acquired yung knowledge na natutunan niya sa teacher niya. Okay? So, kapag ang scode naman daw ay napunta sa right, so sabi dito, scode to the right, this means that the end tail of the curve goes to the right part of the distribution. So sabi, kapag ang end tail naman daw ay napunta sa right, again sa right, ito ay positively scode. Okay? Positively scode. So dito, most of the scores of the students are low or mababa. So, most of the students got scores below the mean value. So, kung ang mean value sa negatively scode ay less than, ngayon naman ang mean value sa positively scode ay greater than. Okay? So, like for example, yung mean dito is 50, yung median dito is 47, yung mode dito is 43. Okay? So, sabi dito sa mean value is greater than. Kaya yung mean dito is 50. So, mababa siya kaysa sa median and mode. Okay? So, ito yung mga cause kung bakit nakakuha ng mababang score yung students. Sabi dito, poor performance of the students. This could be is attributed to the following. Una, ineffective methods of teaching and instructions. Hindi maayos yung pagkaka-deliver. Hindi maayos siguro yung turo sa kanila ng teacher nila. Students are not ready to take the exam. Hindi pa ready yung isang students sa exam, or baka marahil may mga naguguluhan pa siyang lesson. Okay? So, test items are very difficult. So, very difficult daw yung items. O baka ito ay hindi tugma dun sa nilesson ng kanyang teacher, or malayo sa nilesson ng kanyang teacher, kaya nahihirapan siya na i-take. Okay? The same given to the answer, the test is not enough. Okay? So, hindi daw tugma, or baka difficult talaga, or nahihirapan talaga yung bata na i-take. Kaya sila ay nakakuha ng mababang score. Okay, sabi dito, the Criterion-referenced is used in diagnosing students' needs and monitoring their progress. It also likewise used in certification and program evaluation. Okay, so dito sa Criterion, dito na na-diagnose yung students' needs and yung kung paano siya nagpa-progress. Kung may developing na ba, nagde-develop na ba yung kanyang learnings, kung may improvement na ba yung kanyang learnings. So, dito, pwede na siyang sumabak or mag-apply sa mga may certificate or may evaluation. Okay? So, that's all. So, our topic is about utilization, assessment, and data. Thank you.